The distant wail of a baby cut through the silence of the moonlit prairie as Rebecca Keller clutched her infant daughter to her chest, the cold barrel of a gun pressed against her temple. It was 1878 in the harsh Wyoming Territory, and the man who had promised her protection had just revealed himself to be something far more sinister. "Please," Rebecca begged, tears streaming down her dirt-streaked face. "Take anything you want, but don't take my baby. She's all I have left in this world." The bandit's laughter echoed across the empty plains. "A pretty widow and her child will fetch a fine price south of the border," he sneered, reaching for the bundle in her arms. A gunshot cracked through the night air and the bandit crumpled to the ground. Rebecca spun around, clutching her daughter tightly, to see a tall figure silhouetted against the setting sun, rifle still smoking in his hands. "Madam," the stranger said, tipping his hat as he approached. "Seems you and your little one could use some assistance." Rebecca took a cautious step backward. "Who are you?" "Name's Samuel James," he replied, holstering his weapon. "Most folks just call me Sam. I was tracking that outlaw for 3 days. His eyes softened as they fell on the infant. "Is your child hurt?" "No," Rebecca whispered, still trembling. "But he was going to take her from me." Samuel knelt to check that the bandit was dead, then stood and gazed at the darkening horizon. "Night's coming fast, and these plains ain't safe for a woman and child alone. My ranch is half a day's ride from here." "I can't go with you," Rebecca protested, backing away further. "I don't know you." Samuel's weathered face creased with understanding. "Madam, I respect your caution, but there's a storm brewing and bandits travel in packs. I promise on my mother's grave you'll have your own room with a lock on the door." A cold wind whipped across the prairie, and little Emma began to cry. Rebecca looked down at her daughter's face, then back at the stranger who had saved them. "Just for tonight," she conceded reluctantly. Samuel nodded, helping her onto his horse before mounting behind her. As they rode through the gathering darkness, Rebecca clutched her baby tightly, wondering if she had made the right choice or jumped from one danger into another. The ranch appeared on the horizon just as dawn broke, a modest but well-maintained homestead with a small herd of cattle grazing nearby. A weathered sign reading "Whispering Pines Ranch" creaked in the morning breeze. "It's not much," Samuel said as they approached, "but it's home." An older woman emerged from the main house, wiping her hands on her apron. "Samuel James, you've been gone 3 days and you return with a woman and child. What am I to make of this?" "Mrs. Wilkins, this is Rebecca and her daughter. They need shelter." Samuel dismounted and helped Rebecca down. Bandits were after them. The housekeeper's stern expression softened immediately. "Oh, you poor dear. Come inside before that little one catches cold." Rebecca followed Mrs. Wilkins into the warm kitchen while Samuel tended to his horse. The aroma of fresh bread filled the air, making Rebecca realize how long it had been since she'd eaten a proper meal. "Sit, child," Mrs. Wilkins instructed, pouring coffee. "You look half-starved." Rebecca sank into a chair, cradling Emma. "Thank you for your kindness, but we'll be moving on tomorrow." Mrs. Wilkins raised an eyebrow. "And where might you be headed?" The question hung in the air as Rebecca struggled for an answer. The truth was, she had nowhere to go. After her husband died in a mining accident 6 months ago, the bank had foreclosed on their small farm. She'd been traveling east to stay with a distant cousin when the stagecoach was attacked. "I thought as much," Mrs. Wilkins said gently, reading Rebecca's silence. "Eat now. Decisions can wait." That evening, after a hot bath and meal, Rebecca sat by the fireplace in the main room, watching Emma sleep in a makeshift cradle. Samuel entered quietly, carrying a stack of firewood. "Your daughter seems peaceful," he observed, adding logs to the fire. "For now," Rebecca replied. "She'll be hungry again soon." Samuel sat in the chair opposite her. "Mrs. Wilkins says you haven't mentioned where you're headed." Rebecca stared into the flames. "There was a cousin in St. Louis, but I'm not certain she'll take us in." "You could stay here," Samuel said simply. "At least until spring." Rebecca's head snapped up. "Why would you offer that to strangers?" Samuel's gaze remained on the fire. This ranch is too big for one man. Mrs. Wilkins comes by day but returns to town each night to care for her ailing sister." He paused. "And I know what it's like to have nowhere to go." "I can't accept charity," Rebecca said firmly. "Then don't." Samuel leaned forward. "Mrs. Wilkins is getting older. She could use help with the cooking and household. You'd earn your keep and your daughter would have a roof over her head through the winter." Rebecca studied him carefully. His offer seemed genuine, but experience had taught her to be wary of men's generosity. "I'll think on it," she finally said. "That's all I ask." Samuel stood, his tall frame casting long shadows in the firelight. "Good night, Mrs. Keller." True to his word, Rebecca found her bedroom door equipped with a sturdy lock, which she promptly engaged before settling into the first real bed she'd slept in for weeks. The next morning, Rebecca woke to Emma's hungry cries. After feeding her daughter, she ventured downstairs to find Mrs. Wilkins already preparing breakfast. "I've decided to accept Mr. James's offer," Rebecca announced. "At least until I can save enough for train tickets east." Mrs. Wilkins nodded approvingly. "Smart girl. Samuel's a good man, despite his rough edges. Lost his wife and son to fever 5 years back. Never been the same since." Rebecca absorbed this information silently, a widower with his own sorrows perhaps that explained his unexpected kindness. Over the following weeks, Rebecca settled into life at Whispering Pines. She took over much of the cooking and household management, allowing Mrs. Wilkins to reduce her hours. Samuel respected her privacy, often spending days working with his small cattle herd or mending fences. One evening in late November, Rebecca was preparing supper when Samuel entered the kitchen, his expression unusually troubled. "Is something wrong?" she asked, wiping her hands on her apron. "Ryder came by today," he replied. "Says there's been talk in town about a woman and baby staying out here. Seems those bandits who attacked you have friends looking to settle scores." Rebecca's blood ran cold. "They know we're here." "Not yet," Samuel assured her, "but Clearwater ain't a big town. Word travels." He hesitated. "There's something else you should know. The man I shot, he was part of the Reeves gang. They don't forgive and they don't forget." "We should leave," Rebecca said, her voice trembling. "I won't bring danger to your door after all you've done." Samuel shook his head firmly. "Running ain't the answer. I've tangled with their kind before." He took a step closer. "Rebecca, I need to ask you something. How did you come to be alone on that prairie?" Rebecca sank into a chair, the weight of her secrets suddenly overwhelming. "My husband Jacob died in the Silverhorn mine collapse last spring. We had a small homestead, but without him." She swallowed hard. "The bank took everything. I was heading to St. Louis when our stagecoach was attacked. I managed to escape with Emma while the bandits were distracted, but they caught up to us on the third day. That's when you found us." Samuel listened silently, his expression unreadable. "If I had known they'd follow us here," Rebecca continued, "I never would have stayed." "Do you regret it?" Samuel asked quietly. "Staying here?" Rebecca looked up, surprised by the question. "No," she admitted. "Emma has thrived here and She paused. "I've found peace I didn't think possible again." Something shifted in Samuel's gaze. "Then we protect what we've found." He reached for his hat. "I need to ride into town, warn the sheriff. We'll increase patrols around the property." "Samuel," Rebecca called as he reached the door. "Thank you." "For everything." He nodded once before disappearing into the gathering darkness. December arrived with a heavy snowfall that blanketed the ranch in white. The threat of the Reeves gang seemed to diminish as the harsh winter weather made travel difficult. Rebecca found herself relaxing into the daily rhythms of ranch life, taking comfort in the security Samuel provided. On Christmas Eve, Mrs. Wilkins had returned to town to spend the holiday with her sister, leaving Rebecca alone with Samuel and Emma. After putting her daughter to bed, Rebecca joined Samuel by the fire, where he was carving a small wooden horse. "Is that for Emma?" she asked, sitting beside him. "Every child should have a Christmas gift," he replied, his knife moving skillfully over the wood. "Even if she's too young to remember it." Rebecca watched his hands work, noticing for the first time how gentle they could be despite their strength. "You're good with her," she observed. "She smiles whenever you enter the room." Samuel's hands stilled. "I miss that," he said softly. "My boy would be about 7 now." "Mrs. Wilkins told me about your family," Rebecca admitted. "I'm sorry for your loss, as I am for yours." Samuel set the carving aside. "Life takes unexpected turns, sometimes cruel, sometimes." He looked at her. "Sometimes merciful." The air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken feelings. Rebecca had been aware of a growing attachment to this quiet, steadfast man, but had pushed the thoughts aside, believing her heart still belonged to Jacob. "I should check on Emma," she said, rising abruptly. Samuel caught her hand as she passed. "Rebecca," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I know it's too soon, and I have no right to ask, but I need to know if there's any chance that you might someday see me as more than just the man who offered you shelter." Rebecca's heart hammered in her chest. "Samuel," a loud crash from outside interrupted her words. Samuel was on his feet instantly, reaching for his rifle. "Stay here," he ordered, his expression hardening. "Lock the door behind me." Rebecca hurried upstairs to Emma, gathering her sleeping daughter into her arms as she heard Samuel moving through the house. Minutes later, gunshots rang out in the yard. She pressed herself against the wall, Emma clutched to her chest, praying silently. The front door burst open downstairs. "Rebecca," Samuel called. "We need to go now." She rushed downstairs to find him loading a shotgun, his coat already on. "What happened?" "Reeves' gang," he replied grimly. 3 riders, I got one, but the others retreated. They'll be back with reinforcements." He handed her a heavy coat. "We need to reach town before the snow gets worse." "The baby, wrap her tight," Samuel instructed. "The sleigh is fastest in this snow." Within minutes, they were racing across the snow-covered landscape, Emma bundled in blankets between them. The night was clear and bitterly cold, stars blazing overhead as their horse strained against the harness. "They're behind us," Samuel said tensely, glancing back at dark shapes moving through the moonlit snow. A shot rang out, splintering wood near Rebecca's head. She ducked, shielding Emma with her body. "Hold tight," Samuel urged, pushing the horse harder. They crested a hill, the lights of Clearwater visible in the valley below. "Almost there." More shots followed, one grazing Samuel's shoulder. He grimaced but maintained his grip on the reins. As they approached the outskirts of town, the pursuit seemed to fall away, the Reeves gang unwilling to venture too close to civilization. The sheriff's office was dark when they arrived, but the saloon across the street blazed with light and music. Samuel helped Rebecca down, keeping his rifle ready. "Wait here," he said, guiding them to the sheriff's door. "I'll find help." Before he could move, riders appeared at the end of the street, at least 6 men, their faces obscured by bandanas. "Inside," Samuel urged, breaking the sheriff's window to unlock the door. They rushed in as bullets began to pepper the wooden building. "The cells," Samuel directed, leading Rebecca to the back where iron bars offered some protection. "Stay down." The shooting intensified, glass shattering and wood splintering. Emma woke, her terrified wails adding to the chaos. Samuel returned fire through the windows, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. "Samuel," Rebecca called desperately, "there's no way out." He knelt beside her, his face resolute. "There's always a way." He checked his ammunition, grimacing at what remained. "I'm going to create a diversion. When I do, take Emma and run through the back door. The church is 2 buildings down. Reverend Miller will hide you." "No." Rebecca grabbed his arm. "We stay together." Samuel cupped her face with one hand. "I can't lose another family," he said, his voice breaking. "Not again." Family, the word hung between them, powerful and undeniable. "You won't lose us," Rebecca promised, tears streaming down her face, "but I won't lose you either." Their moment was interrupted by a voice from outside. "James, we know you're in there. Send out the woman and child, and maybe we'll let you die quick." Samuel's expression hardened. "Garrett Reeves," he muttered, "been waiting for this day." "You know him," Rebecca whispered. "We have history," Samuel replied grimly. "From before I settled here." A crash from the back of the building signaled someone trying to break in. Samuel positioned himself to cover both entrances, his ammunition dwindling with each shot. Just when it seemed hopeless, new gunfire erupted outside but not directed at them. Shouts and confusion followed, then silence. Rebecca and Samuel exchanged bewildered glances. "Samuel James," a new voice called. "You still breathing in there, Porter?" Samuel responded cautiously. "That you?" "Me and half the town. Mrs. Wilkins raised the alarm when she saw riders heading to your ranch. We've been tracking you since." Samuel exhaled in relief, lowering his rifle. "It's safe," he told Rebecca. "These are friends." They emerged to find the street filled with townspeople armed with shotguns and rifles. The Reeves gang lay dead or had fled, with Garrett Reeves himself face down in the snow. "You're bleeding," Rebecca said, noticing the growing stain on Samuel's coat. "Just a scratch," he insisted, though his face was pale. The town doctor approached, clucking his tongue. "Let's get you patched up, James. You too, madam. That little one needs warming up." As dawn broke over Clearwater, Rebecca sat beside Samuel's bed in the doctor's home. His wound had been more serious than he'd admitted, the bullet lodging near his collarbone, but the doctor had successfully removed it. "He'll recover fully," the doctor had assured her. "Man's too stubborn to die." Emma slept peacefully in a makeshift crib nearby, unaware of the night's dangers. Rebecca held Samuel's hand, her mind replaying his words from the sheriff's office. Family. He considered them his family. Samuel stirred, his eyes fluttering open. "Rebecca, Emma, we're here," she assured him. "We're safe." Relief washed over his face. "The Reeves gang." "Gone for good," according to the sheriff. "Garrett Reeves won't trouble anyone again." Samuel attempted to sit up but winced in pain. Rebecca gently pushed him back. "Rest," she instructed. "We're not going anywhere." Samuel's hand tightened around hers. "About what I said in the sheriff's office. You called us your family," Rebecca said softly. "I meant it," Samuel replied, his eyes never leaving hers. "Rebecca, I know it's too soon and I have no right to ask, but these past months with you and Emma, you've brought life back to Whispering Pines. Back to me." Rebecca's heart swelled with emotion. "Samuel James, when Jacob died, I thought I'd never feel whole again. But you." She took a deep breath. "You've shown me that the heart can heal, can grow, can love again." Hope kindled in Samuel's eyes. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying that Emma and I would be honored to be your family," Rebecca answered, her voice trembling with emotion. "For as long as you'll have us." "Forever," Samuel promised, pulling her closer despite his injury. "You'll both stay with me forever." Their lips met in a tender kiss, sealing a promise born from danger but rooted in deeper feelings that had grown steadily over their months together. Spring arrived at Whispering Pines Ranch with new life bursting forth across the land. The apple trees Samuel had planted years ago blossomed for the first time, their sweet fragrance filling the air as Rebecca hung laundry on the line, Emma toddling around her feet. "Look at these apples coming in," Samuel called as he crossed the yard from the barn. "Might have a proper harvest this year." Rebecca smiled as he scooped Emma up, the little girl squealing with delight as he tossed her gently in the air. Their wedding 3 months ago had been small but joyful, the entire town turning out to celebrate the union that had seemed inevitable to everyone but them. "Mrs. Wilkins is bringing a pie for supper," Rebecca said, reaching for the last sheet in her basket. "She says we have news to discuss." Samuel set Emma down to chase a butterfly. "News? What sort of news?" Rebecca placed a hand on her stomach, still flat but containing their future. "The kind that might have us adding another cradle by winter." Samuel froze, his eyes widening. "Are you certain, Doctor?" "Foster confirmed it yesterday," she nodded, her eyes shining. "Are you happy?" Samuel closed the distance between them in 2 long strides, lifting her off her feet in a jubilant embrace. "Happy doesn't begin to describe it," he whispered against her hair. As he set her down, his expression grew serious. "When I found you that night on the prairie, I was just trying to do right by a woman and child in danger. I never imagined that we would become your second chance," Rebecca finished for him, "or that you would be ours." Samuel nodded, emotion making it difficult to speak. "Sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as our darkest moments," Rebecca said, taking his hand and placing it over her stomach. "This child will know how their parents found each other, how love can grow even in the harshest conditions." Samuel pulled her close, Emma wrapping her arms around their legs as if sensing the importance of the moment. "I promised you'd both stay with me forever," he murmured. "Now forever has a new meaning." As the sun set over Whispering Pines Ranch, casting golden light across the blossoming apple trees, Rebecca thought about the journey that had brought her here from desperate widow begging for her child's life to beloved wife and mother building a future she had once thought impossible. Emma tugged at her skirt, babbling happily as she pointed to a nest of birds in a nearby tree. Rebecca lifted her daughter to see better, Samuel's arm strong around them both, supporting the family they had created together. "Forever," Rebecca whispered, leaning into her husband's embrace as they watched the new life teeming around their home. It was no longer a promise made in desperation, but a future crafted with love one day at a time. 5 years later, Whispering Pines Ranch had flourished beyond anything Rebecca could have imagined. The modest homestead had expanded to include a larger barn, a bunkhouse for the hired hands, and an orchard of apple trees that produced the sweetest fruit in the territory. Their family had grown to Emma, now 6, was joined by 3-year-old Jacob, named for the father she would never know, and 1-year-old Charlotte, who had her father's eyes and her mother's determined spirit. On a warm summer evening, Rebecca stood on the porch watching Samuel teach Emma to ride her own pony, their laughter carrying across the yard. Jacob sat at her feet, carefully building a structure with wooden blocks while Charlotte slept against her shoulder. "You've done well for yourself, Mrs. James," Mrs. Wilkins remarked, joining her on the porch with a basket of fresh eggs. Though well into her 70s now, the older woman still visited regularly, doting on the children as if they were her own grandchildren. "We've been blessed," Rebecca agreed, shifting Charlotte to her other shoulder. "Sometimes I can hardly believe this is my life." Mrs. Wilkins patted her arm. "The Lord works in mysterious ways. Who would have thought that a desperate encounter on the prairie would lead to all this?" Rebecca's mind drifted back to that night, to the terror she had felt when the bandit had threatened to take Emma, to the relief when Samuel appeared like an avenging angel. "I begged him not to take my baby," she murmured, "and instead he gave us a home." "More than a home, Mrs. Wilkins corrected gently. "He gave you a future." In the yard, Samuel dismounted from his horse to adjust Emma's stirrups, his patience evident as he explained proper riding technique. He looked up, catching Rebecca's eye, and smiled that same smile that still made her heart skip after all these years. "Mama, look," Emma called excitedly. "I'm doing it by myself." "I see you, sweetheart," Rebecca called back. "You're a natural, just like your father." Samuel beamed with pride, his hand hovering near Emma's pony just in case. The bond between them had grown so strong that sometimes Rebecca forgot Emma wasn't his biological daughter. He had never once treated her differently from their younger children, loving her with the same fierce devotion he showed to all their family. That night, after the children were asleep, Rebecca and Samuel sat on the porch swing, watching fireflies dance across the darkening yard. His arm rested comfortably around her shoulders, his thumb tracing idle patterns on her skin. "I received a letter from the railroad today," Samuel said, breaking their companionable silence. "They're extending the line to Clearwater next spring." "That will change things," Rebecca observed. "For the town, for our ranch," Samuel nodded thoughtfully. "Change brings opportunity. We could expand our cattle operation, maybe even start shipping those apples east." Rebecca leaned into him, contemplating the future spreading before them like the vast Wyoming sky. "Do you ever think about that night when we first met?" "Often," Samuel admitted. "I was tracking that outlaw for stealing horses, never expecting to find a woman and child in his clutches. I was so afraid," Rebecca remembered, "not just of him but of you too." A strange man offering shelter to a desperate widow. It could have ended very differently. Samuel turned to face her, his expression serious in the fading light. I knew the moment I saw you holding Emma so fiercely that you were someone special, someone worth protecting. And now? Rebecca asked, though she already knew the answer. Now, Samuel said, pulling her closer, you're the one who protects me, from loneliness, from the ghosts of my past. You and our children, you saved me as surely as I saved you that night. Rebecca reached up to trace the lines that time and laughter had etched around his eyes. Do you remember what you said when I begged you not to take my baby? Samuel smiled at the memory. I said you'd both stay with me forever. It sounded like a threat at the time. Rebecca laughed softly. Now it feels like the greatest promise anyone has ever made to me. A promise I intend to keep, Samuel assured her, leaning down to kiss her gently. As darkness settled over Whispering Pines Ranch, Rebecca James closed her eyes and gave silent thanks for the journey that had brought her here to this man, this family, this life they had built together. What had begun with a desperate plea on a moonlit prairie had blossomed into a love story written across the Wyoming landscape, a testament to the healing power of second chances and the enduring strength of the human heart. Forever, she thought, no longer seemed like enough time to spend with the man who had saved not just her life, but her capacity to love again. Forever was just the beginning,